Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Richardson Hitchins post-fight comments after his win over Jose Zepeda last weekend saying, "I know I've got to be more exciting." What is the bane of the pure boxer? A base style that's effective, albeit not very entertaining. Not with the Gentiles. With the biggest win of his career safely in his back pocket, Hitchins reflects on those moments when the crowd wasn't entertained. From a tactical point of view, Hitchins believes he was practically perfect. That said, Hitchins knows that he has to give fans a bit more bang for their buck if he wants to become a household name. "I know this is a show business," Hitchins told a group of reporters. "I know I've got to be more exciting. I'ma keep criticizing myself in that department." Of the three base styles, when a pressure fighter has a dominant performance, usually it's a crowd pleaser. Usually when a pressure fighter has a dominant showing, the fans love it. The same is true of a boxer puncher. Your pressure fighters are your Artur Beterbiev, your Roman Gonzalez, your Erica Cruz, your Ebony Bridges. These are pressure fighters, boxer punchers. When a boxer puncher has a dominant performance, the same is true. Think Gervonta Davis, Teofimo Lopez, Regis Prograis, Sandy Ryan, Chantel Cameron. These are boxer punches, but a pure boxer, when a pure boxer has a dominant performance, it doesn't always go over well with the fans. There's a thin line between stepping on the gas and fighting smart. Before officially getting into the ring with the former title challenger, Hitchins studied Zepeda. After doing so, he knew that the 34-year-old could crack with the best of them. So even though there were times when Hitchins believed he had his man in trouble, thanks to Zepeda's power, he didn't feel the need to go balls to the wall. "I hurt him with a body shot. I also hurt him with a right hand. I seen blood, but I wasn't sure. He was keeping his poker face. I didn't want to push the action and get caught with a big shot. Zepeda has one-punch power. I felt it from round one. Safety first." Do you see how Richardson Hitchins acknowledges that he hurt the guy at least 2 times, but he wasn't sure, so he wanted to be cautious. He wanted to be careful. That is the pure boxer's calling card. Safety first. Your pure boxers like Guillermo Rigondeaux, Erislandy Lara, Sky Nicholson, these are pure boxers. And what's consistent with the pure boxer is long distance, long range fighting, movement, economic output, and economic work rate, as to not give their opponent anything they could exploit. Too many punches to counter. They pot shot instead. 1 and 2 punches at a time. Now that's not saying that it's impossible for a pure boxer to put on an entertaining, albeit dominant performance. It's entirely possible. And we saw Shakur Stevenson make just such an adjustment after the Nicotila fight. A lot of people said, yeah, he dominated Nicotila, but it was a snooze fest. After that, you saw more of a conscious effort from Shakur to put punches together, to show more spite, more aggression, more bad intentions. The same is true of Sky Nicholson, who I just mentioned. She showed more of a work rate, more spite in her last fight with Sabrina Perez. It can be done. If Richardson Hitchins wants to find a happy medium between his pure boxer-based style and pleasing a crowd, it is possible. Campaigning at 140 pounds, a particularly deep division, Matchroom has quite a few prize stallions at 140 pounds. They've got Regis Prograis, Dalton Smith, Liam Bottle. I think Stevie Sparks is still over there. Jack Cataract. It's Catterall. Tuna Casserole. Matchroom has a noticeable investment in the 140-pound division. Many possible matchups for Hitchins Richards to improve his record and at the same time work on things. Work on being effective, but entertaining as well. And he needs to, because you don't want to become a member of the who needs your claw. You don't want that. As it pertains to 140 pounds and 140-pound action, WBC champion Regis Prograis promises to beat Haney, Devin Haney, saying, "I don't get the recognition I deserve. I'm on the verge of superstardom." Perhaps if he knocks out Devin. Though it's easier said than done. "I'm training for December 9th. I've been training for this. First, the date was supposed to be October 28th. Then I signed for November 11th, and now they say December 9th is the date. I've been locked in ever since. I'm just ready," Prograis told BoxingScene.com in an interview. Now, Regis Prograis, who I mentioned in passing, he's a boxer puncher, more specifically, a counterpuncher. It's important to note that all three base styles, all three of them, pure boxer, boxer puncher, pressure fighter, they can show some countering ability. All three of them can, though it's mostly pure boxers and boxer punchers that place some emphasis on counter punching, whereas, pressure fighters, they're Gatling guns. They throw punches in bunches. It's what they do. They don't focus as much on countering a guy or a girl. More specific to this conversation, Regis Prograis' speciality is setting up counter shots, rolling punches off the shoulder, and countering in kind. He's good at it. I'm a two-time world champion, and I don't get the recognition I deserve. But this fight is going to put me on the map where I belong, said Prograis. My road has never been easy. It's always been kind of bumpy. It'll get even bumpier if he doesn't make the necessary adjustments. As stated, Regis Prograis is a boxer puncher, a counter puncher. We'll notice that a good number of boxer punchers place some emphasis on counter punching, using what power they have, what God-given power they have, to set up a single shot that could take the other guy or girl out. Think Teofimo Lopez. Think Gervonta Davis. These are the kind of fighters that they're not going to move in until they get off that counter shot. And once they do, then they'll add on to it. Put punches together. Just so happens to be Regis Prograis. Same methodology. Prograis, who realizes that a resounding winning performance against Haney will lead to a major breakthrough because suddenly potential fights against the likes of Gervonta Davis, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia could be even closer to becoming a reality. I feel like I'm on the verge of superstardom, said Prograis. I am going to show up and show out December 9th. If he's going to, he's got to make some adjustments because being a counterpuncher, a characteristic counterpuncher, it's got its drawbacks depending on who you're fighting. If you're fighting a pressure guy that's always opening up, always standing in front of you, always stepping into their punches, it's that much easier for you to set up those counters. But when you're fighting a judicious jabber, a pure boxer, always fighting from a safe distance, it's a lot harder. They don't throw as many punches as a pressure fighter per se, so you don't have as many countering opportunities. And for Regis, that's what happened in his last fight with Puerto Rico's own Danielito Zorrilla. You had a guy who's not stepping into his punches. If anything, he's moving away, circling away from the action. He's trying to set you up. And you saw that Regis didn't look good in that fight. He had to try to give chase. He had to go in there and try to open the other guy up when the guy's moving away from the action. That made Regis look human. That made Regis look flawed. And it just so happens Devin's a pure boxer. He does that. He fights from a safe distance. So where a counterpuncher like Regis is used to being the one that creates space in order to set traps, that's what the pure boxer is going to do to them. Maintain distance. Which point, the best thing a guy like Regis can do is break character a bit and close that distance. Try to. Without getting walked into punches. To dismantle a pure boxer like Devin, you have to borrow some of the properties of the pressure fighter. And pressure fighters, really good ones, they might throw a double jab, a triple jab, not a single jab. Not just one. You're talking about 2, maybe even 3 jabs, short ones. And you step into those jabs. The purpose of those jabs isn't necessarily to do damage. No, you're just throwing those jabs to keep the other guy's guns holstered while you close the distance. Close it safely. To get close. Close enough to land power shots, body shots, uppercuts, punches that do a lot of damage. And if nothing else, give you the appearance of being the busier fighter, the more prolific puncher in a round. That if nothing else, you might win the round on activity alone. This is one of the adjustments that Regis has got to make. He's got to be busier. He can't look for a single shot to do the guy just as well. He's got to cut off the ring. Limit Devin Haney's exits. Because he is going to stay behind his jab, and if you get past it, he's going to move. Not completely sure yet, but I think that Devin is a little bit taller than Regis and a little bit longer. Maybe even a little bit faster. He's definitely younger. He's going to use that to keep Regis Prograis at arm's length and under his control. Regis has got to make some adjustments. He's got to throw punches in bunches. He's got to work on cutting off the ring. He's already very good at fighting on a swivel, angling that torso away from punches. He's going to need to do that while he's closing the gap on Devin. That's the name of the game. He's got to get close to him. Bust him up. The last thing that Regis needs is for this to turn into a chess match. Got to turn it into a fight. Regis is a noticeably bigger, much bigger puncher than Devin Haney. All that power, it counts for nothing if you don't land, and you can't land if you don't throw. Swear in the world of boxing, Showtime executive Stephen Espinoza refuses to rule out a Showtime exit, an exit from the sport of boxing. All week, it's been the talk of the town that beyond next year, they might be done.
Done with boxing.
I've seen some of the sources, and some of them are comical, to be completely honest. Espinoza said in a response to the reports which started to circulate this week, "It sounds great from the outside, but it's simply not the reality. These kinds of rumors are something we've dealt with consistently since at least 2018. I understand why they are happening now. Paramount is going through a lot of changes. In fact, there have been a lot of changes throughout the media industry. The reality right here, right now, is that nobody knows what the future holds. All we can do is keep making the best fights, and that is our response. Everyone can say that we're going out of business.
They are.
And that we have been since 2018. But all we do is continue to put on the biggest and best fights."
All right.
These rumors have been circulating within the world of boxing for some time now, but the true evidence of it, at least that possibility, exists outside of the world of boxing.
The layoffs, the budget cuts, the show cancellations.
Decisions made by those who are above Stefan Espinoza's pay grade. There hasn't been a decision made yet, but anything could happen, Espinoza added. "What I am confident of is that this sport always survives and that it will continue to thrive, whether it's on Showtime for another 37 years or a transition to somewhere else. The sport is as healthy as it has been for a long time. There are a lot of changes going on. There have been layoffs at every major media company. It's not so much about referendum on boxing, but a referendum on how a company spends its money. There have been a lot of projects cut at a lot of networks that were very valuable. In trying to navigate this new business model, there are going to be some changes along the way. Whether boxing is one of those changes remains to be seen."
In layman's terms, he's not ruling it out.
Stefan said it himself. It's not so much about a referendum on boxing, but a referendum on how a company spends its money. We already saw HBO leave the sport of boxing.
Years ago.
They decided not to keep it. It wasn't a part of their bottom line anymore. So given what Showtime and Paramount are going through, who's to say that they don't take a similar course of action?
They might.
How much in terms of long-term viewership and long-term subscribers does boxing content bring to the Showtime platform? That's the question. And is it enough that the people at Paramount will decide to keep it? One suggestion is that Showtime may decide to stay in boxing solely as a pay-per-view vehicle, but Espinoza says that is not a viable solution. It doesn't make any sense, and that is one of the things I have laughed at, Espinoza added. It wouldn't make sense for either side. You could get one of 100 places to distribute a pay-per-view, but having a pay-per-view without the stuff that actually builds it, it doesn't really have any value.
And yet, that's exactly what Fox did right before they left the sport. All you started getting from Fox were pay-per-views. No more regular schedule of fights.
When they cut the funding and stopped spending money on boxing content, all you got were box office fights throughout the lifetime of their deal. And once the deal was done, so were they.
They didn't spend any money on those pay-per-views, you understand. The reason those fights were billed as pay-per-views is because Fox wasn't paying anymore.
They weren't bankrolling those shows. Thus, the only way to make those fights happen was to put them on pay-per-view, hoping that the money would come from me and you.
Stefan says that it wouldn't make sense for Showtime to just do pay-per-views moving forward.
Because it wouldn't make sense to do those pay-per-views without the added content that builds them, but maybe the people at Paramount have let the people at Showtime do all the building they're going to do, and at this point,
They're planning their exit.
they're not going to fritter away dollars on boxing content anymore.
Build fights anymore.
They're going to see out the length of their deal with the PBC, get your last few pay-per-views out. It was nice doing business with you.
Hasta luego.
It was a good run. In so many words, that's what Fox did.
Rumors indicate that Al is in the market for a new broadcast partner, and I don't think that those rumors would be out there if things were kooky crunchy over at Showtime. There's got to be a reason for that.
I don't expect Stefan Espinoza to show everybody in the boxing world all his cards and tell everybody in the boxing world how he really feels about what's going on and that he might be out of a job. As the head of Showtime Sports,
If the people at Paramount decide to phase out sports because it's not a part of their bottom line,
they're just not getting enough back for what they've been spending on sports. Where do you think that leaves a Showtime Sports executive.
The unemployment line.
Scenario with Shakur where it's like Terrence, where like he inevitably has to go to PBC to make a take.
He doesn't have to go to TBC because we control a lot of the money now, and as you can see by the fight in Saudi Arabia. And money makes the world go around in boxing.
It's another angle of this you have to consider. Now that both Bob Arum and Frank Warren jointly are in bed with the new management over there in Saudi, who's interested in bringing big-time boxing matches to that region of the world, and all that money they now have access to.
And what Showtime's going through.
Top Rank already has the annual budget they've been receiving from ESPN and that platform, but now they're in bed with the Saudis.
That's more money.
More leverage. And what the people at Showtime and those fighters that fight on that platform most exclusively, what they're going through and their uncertain future, because Stephen Espinoza didn't rule out Showtime leaving boxing. He didn't rule it out.
We know it's not outside the realm of possibility. HBO ended up leaving boxing. A premium cable network like Showtime is a premium cable network.
HBO ended up leaving boxing. Fox, who the PBC were in bed with not that long ago, they ended up leaving boxing. So Showtime doing the same is not outside the realm of possibility. What happens to a fighter like Gervonta Davis?
Doesn't have another Ryan Garcia.
Haymanites, PBC supporters, have been patting themselves on the back for how well that fight did commercially.
Now it's done.
Who else are you going to fight that makes for a big fight? Chris Colbert?
You'll be back to just above 200,000 buys in no time with that guy.
And Frank Martin, if Gervonta Davis decided to fight him. That there isn't a single fight on the PBC side of things that makes for a bigger fight than a Shakur Stevenson fight. And I know that a Shakur Stevenson fight probably wouldn't do 1 million buys like the Garcia fight did, but it would do more buys than a Frank Martin fight.
Yeah.
It would do more buys than a Chris Colbert fight,
Yeah.
or an Isaac Cruz rematch, or a Rolly Romero rematch.
Fighting Shakur does more buys than fighting any of those guys.
The only major fights that Gervonta Davis has left, anywhere in between 135 and 140, are the fights he doesn't want, like a fight with Shakur or a fight with Devin, rather the winner of Haney versus Prograis.
Teofimo Lopez.
One of those fights makes for a bigger fight than any fight he can have on his own side of things. Now that Bob's in bed with the Saudis, he now has access to that treasure chest over there in that region of the world to bring big-time boxing matches to that region of the world. Does that not change the axis of power?
The Saudis behind him, he could bankroll the Bivol versus Better Beef fight.
And a Stevenson versus Davis fight, if Gervonta Davis were actually interested. Now, I don't think he is, or his team.
They'd sooner fight an MMA fighter than Shakur Stevenson.
That is, I would sooner expect them to try every gimmick Floyd Mayweather has already tried before they take a gamble on Shakur Stevenson.